Check, check. So everyone, I think we will start the meeting in 5 minutes. Just wait for all participation comes. Itu kapan? Itu kapan? Oh, pas di sini. Oh. We also want to say hi to Dr. Diki Budiman that already with us in Zoom meetings. So please be prepared. We will shortly begin the plenary sessions. We also have snacks and tea or coffee outside of the room. But there's no rule. You can bring all the snacks and the drink to the room. Online udah bisa. Yang Zoom belum. Yang Zoom masih di setting. I think we will start this meeting in 5 minutes while the techniques from all the material needs to be gathered. The camera from behind should... Okay. The camera is ready. Okay, now, good evening. Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to our first sessions, plenary sessions, and second plenary sessions. The moderator for these plenary sessions will be from Bapak Agung Prakoso as one of the Civil-20 Vaccine Access and Global Health Working Group. And there will be the overview and open discussion after all the speakers finish the presentations. And we again kindly remind you that all the we organizer provide interpretations on the Zoom platform from translation for the translations in English to Bahasa and Bahasa to English. If you are online, please use the interpretation tools. And if you're here in this room, please join through your own Zoom device and use the interpreter tools. Okay, without wasting our valuable time, let us proceed to our first plenary sessions. I will welcome Bapak Agung Prakoso to the stage. Bapak, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Civil-20 Vaccine Access and Global Working Groups, distinguished speakers on this plenary session. Actually, I'm not moderating the plenary session because this plenary session will be delivered by the speakers, and we have 4 speakers in this plenary session, and the last is the overview from members. If there is one of you who wants to give updates or give some opinion or give some intervention on this meeting in this plenary session. Only that, we note that this is not the open discussion, but we still open the overview from all of you. So this plenary session is the vaccine inequities in the global south and also COVID-19 access for vulnerable group. Yeah, this theme we take as the to put the people-centered approach in the COVID-19 and pandemics, and so we can reach more from the vulnerable groups, marginalized group, and we can put the people-centered approach as the COVID-19 prevention preparedness. And before further ado, I will start this session. I will introduce the speakers on this session. The first is we have Bapak Diki Budiman from Griffith University, and the second we have Bapak Daniel Marguari from Spiritia Foundation, and we have Bapak Hamid Abidin from Filantropi Indonesia, and also Mbak Arshinta from Yakkum. I will introduce the first speaker. The first speaker is Bapak Diki Budiman. Bapak Diki, can you hear us now? Okay, thank you, Bapak Diki. Bapak Diki Budiman is epidemiolog from Griffith University, and he will give us the condition of COVID-19 access in Indonesia, especially in vaccine inequities in the global south. Please, Pak Diki, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Agung. Can I share screen?
I'm sorry, Pak Diki, we cannot hear you.
Okay.
But we
can you hear me? Hi, hello.
Okay. Can you
hear
again,
my voice?
Diki?
Can you hear my voice? Agung? Halo? Halo? Halo?
Sebentar, Bapak. Please wait for
Bisa dengar suara saya, Mas Agung?
Technical issues. Please, check it again, Pak Haji?
Tes, 1, 2, 3.
It's clearly now in the room. Thank you. Please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think I have your limited time to present my PowerPoint. Thank you for time to represent the Lapor COVID. I'm as one of the collaborator of Lapor COVID. Will present the vaccine inequities, especially, of course, from the Indonesia perspective. Okay. So as the introduction, of course, we have to start from the similar understanding about what is vaccine equity means. This means that vaccines should be allocated across all the countries based on needs and regardless of their status. This is very important because it means that all people should have equal access to a vaccine that protects. It's very important that this is scientifically proven that it's protect against the COVID-19 infection, especially in severity and mortality. That's very important. That's why the vaccine equity is very important. And why this is important? Because a world without COVID-19 will not be possible until everyone has equal access to vaccine. This is the reason why vaccine equity is very important. And also when we have this inequity in vaccine, it's not only leaving millions or billions of people vulnerable to the deadly virus, but also allowing even more deadly variants to emerge. That what we show now, BA4, BA5, BA4.6, and others. So, and many more will come and spread across the globe. And moreover, unequal distribution of vaccine will deepen inequality as aggregate the gap between rich and poor, and also reverse decades of hard-won progress in human development. This is very important. And inequity we have witnessed it during the COVID-19 pandemic around the globe regarding vaccine is one of the most significant failures of international cooperation. This is very important message. I've been practiced in global diplomacy. I helped global diplomacy for almost 2 decades, and this is one of the failure of international cooperation. And vaccine inequity jeopardize also the safety of everyone and contribute to growing inequality between and within countries, and no exception with Indonesia. That's why I will present from Indonesia perspective. Indonesia, the good news for Indonesia, we already achieved above 70% national coverage with the COVID-19 vaccine as a global imperative. And this already achieved even before the WHO's target in July. But there is a need to establish complementary multi-track approaches that consider target by number, by
recording
place,
in progress,
and also by population, as mentioned before by the MC about the vulnerable, the most risk population, and also by time. This is very important. Multi-track approach is very important because we cannot also look at the national level. We have to look at even until the local level, because otherwise the inequity will still exist. And the partnership with NGO are vital to support the government to administer millions of vaccination and keep routine immunization going. Because during this pandemic, we still have to also doing our vaccination and immunization program for polio or measles and others. And also because of this high or the magnitude of the problem, that's why the partnership with the NGO, such as with the Lapor COVID, is very important, and others, because then we can hand in hand with the government to fulfill our goals. The Lapor COVID has the monitoring citizen report. This is the form or the format of this monitoring citizen report by the Lapor COVID. And we also have partners, as you see in the below screen. And what we focusing on this monitoring is first in data collection, in target population, of especially the most vulnerable ones, the vaccine distribution, the vaccination management, reporting and managing adverse vaccination events, and also the risk communication. So there is 5 monitoring focus that doing by the Lapor COVID. I will not state or present in detail about this each of the focus monitoring, but I will just briefly say the each of these focus has supported by the data information from the society or from the community about their reporting or their feedback. For example, let's say for example for data collection or target population, they say about the vulnerable groups are not easy to get the vaccine. That's very, very dangerous because we know in this pandemic era, we have to protect the most vulnerable one. And also, of course, this is the report from some area, not from all, but of course, this report is very important to address. And also, it's about the difficulty in migrating data vaccine, gotong royong, to get government program vaccine. This is some of the example of the reporting as the monitoring result. And also for the vaccine distribution, one of the example is about the vaccine unavailability or the vaccine stock run out according to the type of vaccine needed by the resident. This is also become the problem for the vaccine access. And also the vaccine schedule and stock are not yet available for the second or the third dose. That's not sometimes very, very also often happening, even when during my stay in Indonesia a few months ago. So, and the third one is about the vaccination management. Also, there is a reporting about no screening before vaccination of the health status, and also even the screening not carried out appropriately, and also the piloting the health protocol during the vaccination, such as crowding and also no keeping distance, and also other health protocols. And the fourth one is about the reporting and managing adverse vaccination. This is very, very, very important because this aspect will also build the trust of society or community, because the transparency is very important, and data what we have to show to the community is also should just say what is the adverse vaccination event. And of course, we know the vaccine is safe, the vaccine effective, but without transparency, we cannot build this trust. And the last one is about the risk communication. Of course, this risk communication will support all the focus of monitoring or aspect of this vaccination. That's why it's very important. And if we talk about this risk communication, it's not only about the message, it's not only about the communication, it's also about the risk management, about how we do and what we can do, and what the option that we when we achieve or we do the certain of strategy. That's many things that under this risk communication. And of course, one of the very important things also under this risk communication is about how we can counter, address the hoax, the infodemic regarding the vaccination program. And that's very important. Otherwise, we'll see many people will reduce their eager or motive to do the vaccination, especially for the booster one. And this is some of the example of how the community or society also give their feedback about the lack of supervision result in widespread abuse of vaccination program, and of course this also will influence in the equity of the vaccine. And also resident complain about of the difficulty in accessing vaccine. Of course, this is also the problem. But again, this is in spirit to support the government, and also especially because the central government, of course, it will need this kind of collaboration and help to know where is the problem in which location, in where location, and others. I will come to the last three slide of my presentation. First, of course, from the Indonesian perspective, then this lesson learned can also imply and also become the lesson for the global. First, that the global health security research, I say that the health inequity was exposed and exacerbated by the pandemic. That's very, very sure. And we predicted all the global health experts already predicted that the vaccine equity issue during pandemic will happen. But we then realized the world didn't cooperate and mitigate well. And for example, COVID has been 3 years and only 25% of the African population has received first vaccine series. That's very terrible. And now we also facing the monkeypox. The monkeypox been around 50 years of neglected disease in Africa, and still no drug or vaccine for this. I mean, for Africa. It was also for HIV. I saw my brother Daniel in here. You know, we know it was the ART, the antiretroviral for HIV, has been found in Western, but it was 10 years delay before this antiretroviral became widely available in Africa, and it's cost 10 million die because of this HIV disease. So in equity of vaccine, the reason why I put this is not only about the COVID-19 vaccine, it's also about the many communicable vaccine, and we have to take a lesson learned from this. And the world continues to struggle at the pattern of inequity. That's very sad. And even the Public Health Emergency International Concern Declaration already stated the early of 2020 for COVID-19, and also just recently for monkeypox. But this is not a magic one that will miraculously fix this about inequity without political will and commitment to changing the status quo. And the vaccine and health inequity is a significant reason why we continue to fail to respond to contain emerging infections adequately. That's a lesson that we cannot afford to keep not learning. It's very expensive learning. And it is nearly impossible, the last lesson learned, that to combat viruses, including COVID-19 or any kind of virus, with vaccine inequity, without making vaccine more readily available, tackling global vaccine inequity, and putting in place for COVID-19 protection like masking and others. That's the lesson learned from what I saw in Indonesia, and also from the feedback from the community. And the recommendation, of course, then we know that the vaccine inequity is deliberate the global architecture of unfairness. This is very strong message that I hope the G20 also can send this message, not only to the leader within the G20, but also to the global leaders, because this becomes the global health security issue and threat for global. And the last one, the Lapor COVID, we give the recommendation based on the feedback from the community and also our literature finding. First, that the accurate and up-to-date data and information is very critical component in guiding the nation, in guiding even the global to understanding of vaccine equity. And this is something that we have to strengthen. And understanding the tradition and culture is vital to ending vaccine inequity, because from the feedback from the community, we know that some tradition, some culture, even about the religion, we have to also address about this halal haram vaccine and others. And also the literacy of vaccine recipients is very important. That's why the risk communication is very important. And we know now the world strategy under WHO study already use this heterologous vaccination as a strategy to minimize inequity in COVID-19 vaccine access, because let's say not all country has enough stock for let's say Moderna or Pfizer, but they can use this as heterologous, as the booster vaccine or as the third dose or fourth dose. The other recommendation is about the fostering new partnership to reduce inequity, because again, partnership NGO is not only at the national level, but as we learn from HIV program, we need to find a local NGO or local group or population that can also strengthen our program for vaccine program. And also strengthening international cooperation and boost the research and development of vaccine to ensure the global supplies. This is very, very important. And also increase access to vaccination service, such as our workplace, malls, and pharmacy. That's also needed, and because we need to also intensify and strengthen our access to the vaccination. And also vaccination internal quality audit and reminder system is very important, because as we know in previous slide, the feedback from communities about the abuse for this program, vaccination program. That's why internal quality audit is very important also. And also vaccination service provider information and side effect is very important, because we have to, again, transparent in terms of this issue to build the trust of the public. And the last one, empowering national and local health staff for vaccination management, because this is the first time in human history we done the very big vaccination program from in all age group, from child until elderly. And of course we need to empowering, and I mean the knowledge, the skill of our health staff, not only at national level but also at the local level. That's from Lapor COVID presentation, and thank you for the opportunity to present our finding and also our recommendation. Thank you. Saya nggak bisa dengar suaranya.
Maybe we can check. Can you hear us, Pak?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your insightful presentation related to this vaccine inequities. And especially you mentioned the COVID-19 has been 3 years, but only 25% African population has received the first doses. That's why also we are here. We need to bolster the vaccination not only in Indonesia, especially in the global South Africa continent, because we know that the vaccine inequities still happen, and now we try to the best to push the G20 to end this problem. Thank you also for mention the problem in HIV, access to HIV in Africa. And we put the next speakers is Bang Daniel Marguari. He is CEO of Spiritia Foundation, 20 more years experience in evolving HIV community. And I am sure that he can deliver what happened to the HIV communities, and not only HIV, maybe the TB also, and also the malaria, because what the impact to these vulnerable groups, basically in the pandemic of COVID-19. As I mentioned, we put some vulnerable groups in this session to implement our commitment in people-centered approach. And Bang Daniel, the floor is yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Agum, to having introducing me, and also to allow me to share our organization experience during the COVID situation. I will share one of the example of disease intervention, what we have been doing during COVID for the last 2 years. Before that, say hi to Mas Diki. Mas Diki, you remind me that I promised to you that we continue our further discussion about monkeypox. I will reach you very soon. So sorry, not calling you so in the last few weeks. I think I will reach you very soon. Nice to meet you again here, although with virtual. Yeah. With this opportunity, I will let you know about what we have been doing. Can you go with another slide, please? Yeah, thank you so much. My organization is Spiritia Foundation, one of the national organization working for HIV and TB HIV in Indonesia. It has been engaging in this response more than 27 years. We are focused with HIV and TB HIV with our target population for PLHIV in the beginning. Then we expand for the other key population or risk population for men having sex with men, transgender, people with injecting drug users, and the PLHIV we continue until the beginning. Spiritia has been forming actually. Our coverage right now by geographical is 250 district of 500 something in Indonesia. I show you about some of the difficulties during the COVID situation. My organization has a lot of activities. I think it's more than 100 activities that we need to conduct by every year. This is just example for, yes, thank you so much, for a few kind of activities that we need to conduct by 2020, 2021 until 2022. That's only a few things that you can see. There are a lot of activities that almost all the activities should conduct by physically to meet the people. To reach more than 200,000 men having sex with men, more than 10,000 for transgender, for more than 10,000 for people with injecting drug users, and almost 150,000 for people living with HIV in Indonesia every semester, actually, not every year. With that situation, starting on March 2020, I think, that we have to stop almost all activities that you can see by in the slide. Almost every activities we stop at the moment because restriction, lockdown, what we have been doing in many time in Indonesia by a few periods because of COVID, increasingly in a few period that we have to stop. But after 1 or 2 weeks, we decide that we have to find a new strategy. We have to develop an innovative way because we cannot stuck with this situation. We have to run away. We cannot run away. We have to find the better solution to find our difficulty moment actually until today. Now the COVID still increase. Let me show you a few the rapid strategy what we build, and also the innovative approach what we have been doing, and until today we continuing for some of the those approach. Yes, that's because we are the principal recipient of the Global Fund, managing almost 100 grantees with 100 partners in Indonesia, that we have a meeting and we discuss together. We cannot stop working. We need to continue. The leadership should be there, and we have to find a better way, and we cannot wait with the COVID done in Indonesia, because we don't know when it will finish. Then we developed the COVID protocol, how we can working in the COVID situation. We develop many guidance relate people how to work in the programmatic thing, in the M&E thing, how they work in the COVID situation. Then we did the COVID rapid assessment. What it is, because when the COVID increase in the country, it doesn't mean in everywhere. It doesn't mean in when we have 5 intervention in 252. It doesn't mean in the same week or in the same one COVID increase in every district. So it's we divide it by classification: low cases, middle cases, or high cases. So we build a strategy when the some districts still low cases. We put effort optimally in that place for all the intervention that we can reach people, we can educate people, we can facilitate to change their behavior, accessing them to the testing, accessing them to the treatment, on find a way how to make them can continue to access with the treatment, so many things. Then when that district move to the other week become the middle cases, we change the strategy, what kind of the intervention we need to implement in those area. Same, because in you know, if we'll see the situation in Indonesia, usually the cases coming very soon increase in Jakarta, then in West Java, then in East Java. But in Kalimantan, in Sulawesi, it will need another month. So then we move some of the program to the places that it's still allowed to optimize our program. So many way that we find and develop the strategy and implement to make the program is running. It's not about the project, because we never want to work by a project, because it's to save the people, to help the people, to make people get education, to make people change their behavior, to make people access the testing and treatment. That's what for we need to continue our works. All the activities we have to change from face to face become the virtual. Then also so many activities that we need to change. We cannot reach people in the hotspot anymore. Then we go to the people door to door. We come to their place. We meet them to their place. We reach them. We educate. We're accessing them for testing. We bring the drugs, the treatment to their home, and using many mechanisms to make them never stop on treatment. So many ways we develop, and also we are working. We send a letter to the health minister. I was the one who sent the letter, signed the letter to health minister, because at the moment one of the MOH staff talked to me, Bang, you should make a letter to health minister. I will help you write a letter, request a few hundred activists to get the vaccine access. That's the first time our the activists in Jakarta especially, we get the access, and then we success for a few hundred people. Then we expand this approach to make a lot of activists in many districts also get the access of vaccine. That's a beginning step actually. So many ways we have been developing the way, and we are talking to our donor to get to change we have a saving and then do some reprogramming to adapt and adopt with the COVID situation, and approve very quickly respond, and also the Global Fund give additional funding for Indonesia to respond for COVID. This is the example of result. I doesn't want to you focusly with the number, but see the color. If we see the first color at 2019, it's because before the COVID. If I put the green color, that's a good result. The yellow color is still good. The red color is the obstacle, the difficult achievement. But if we saw this table, 2019, before COVID, compared to 2020, compared to 2021, almost the same. Why? Because all the strategy what we have been doing, the innovative way what we have been doing, it's helped us. In the end, almost all the program what we have been responsible to implement to get the target as we expect, that it's achieved almost. So it's implicate, but for Spiritia, with that situation, it helped a lot. It's not implicate very seriously in the implementation of program to reach, to support the people. That's our situation compared before and in the COVID situation. Until this year also, in this semester or last semester, we still can manage our program to implement, to reach what we expect, to support what we expect. The last two slides, the lesson learned and recommendation. What we learn, what my organization learned, what HIV learned, what I'm thinking, there are a lot, but I raise here for 4 things. One, in dealing with COVID pandemic, we have to be realistic, realize that the engagement of CSO and communities play very significant role in stopping the spread and supporting people who are infected with COVID. In many countries, with the community, with the civil society engagement, make the country success to manage the COVID in their country. So this is a good lesson learned. This is a good moment for us to learn from this, not only for HIV, for TB, for any disease, for any activism for health, that we have to push to ensure the government, the meaningful and inclusive engagement community and civil society, community-based and led, civil society and organization in every level, in terms of decision making, implementation, in monitoring, in many kind of level for all health strategy and program in achieving UHC. It's very important to engage them meaningfully. That's a recommendation. The second lesson learned, the national health budget has suddenly increased significantly in tackling COVID. We have to remember, in many countries, including Indonesia, our health budget, Indonesia has a health budget for 5% from the national budget. It's increased already. In many countries also, maybe less, or maybe just 6 or 7%. But with the COVID situation, the health budget, it can be 10% or 20% of the national budget in the country level. What the lesson learned? The lesson learned is, when there is a problem seriously, that government put this is very serious, the health budget increase, which is the budget is there, the money is there. They can put there. So this is a good moment. That's my recommendation, our opportunity to advocate our government, to put our disease, our issue, our focus is also serious. Also, it's very important to take the action, the responsibility for the country to increase the budget. It's not only for COVID, for the future, but put a budget for other diseases or for other intervention. That's the second recommendation. The third, the lesson learned, the implementation of other health prevention programs has been disrupted slowly due to the COVID situation and become left behind. There are many other diseases, cases are increased as implication. I have to say, sorry, my presentation not shown that it's a very serious intervention managing by Spiritia, but maybe this is special cases, but overall cases, all the disease intervention facing very difficulties at the moment. We need to, the recommendation, we need to encourage the political leaders to strengthen the global health architecture. Beside we are talking about PPPR, because it's not only that, to strengthen the global health architecture is very important to achieve the SDG target on 2030. The last lesson learned from what I can propose here, the economic condition of various countries are increasingly disrupted and many countries are expected to experience an economic recession next year, or maybe some or few of countries already in this situation already. I just read in the newspaper 66 expected will be facing the recession next year, although Indonesia not saying one of the 66, but it can be in the future. So that's a very serious lesson learned for us. It's very difficult for us to continue to respond how to answer the SDG goal and target. So my recommendation, funding support from various donor countries, especially in G20, both bilaterally, through bilateral or through the mechanism from other platform like a Global Fund, HTB Malaria, or Gavi, or United, or other platform mechanism need to continue and support for various diseases. It's not we are talking about HIV, TB, and malaria, for any focus in various countries also. To get managed by government, by civil society, by communities. That I think that recommendation and lesson learned I can share to you. Hopefully, it has a benefit for us to consider and how we can starting from this to build a new strategy for us for advocacy. Thank you so much.
Give applause one more to Bang Daniel Marguari. That's a very nice insight for us, especially in the last sentence, build the stronger mechanism. Strengthen and also for the strengthen the global health architecture beside the PPPR, because we need to achieve the SDGs targets also. Next speaker is Mas Hamid Abidin from the Filantropi Indonesia, as a part of GSO Coalition for Access to Vaccine on Indigenous People and Vulnerable Groups. And also, we note that a few days ago, we celebrate International Indigenous Peoples Days. So, Mas Hamid Abidin will deliver how the challenge for the indigenous people to access the COVID-19 tools. Mas Hamid Abidin, please, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam Bapak Ibu sekalian. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I prepare my presentation in Bahasa Indonesia. Therefore, I would like to deliver it in Bahasa. Bapak Ibu sekalian, terima kasih kami sudah diberi kesempatan untuk mempresentasikan terkait dukungan untuk masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan di masa pandemi. Sebelumnya kami ingin memperkenalkan diri saya Hamid Abidin dari Perhimpunan Filantropi Indonesia, satu asosiasi yang beranggotakan lembaga-lembaga filantropi atau lembaga-lembaga amal. Ini belakangan dalam beberapa minggu terakhir banyak diburu orang berkaitan dengan kasus yang terjadi di salah satu lembaga filantropi. Tapi kita berharap itu tidak menjadi presiden yang membuat kegiatan filantropi kita kemudian setback ya, atau mundur. Bapak Ibu sekalian, dalam kesempatan kali ini saya juga mewakili dari teman-teman di Koalisi Akses Vaksin untuk Masyarakat Adat dan Kelompok Rentan. Ini satu koalisi yang beranggotakan beberapa organisasi, ada teman-teman AMAN, Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara, ada KPA, Konsorsium Pembaruan Agraria, ada teman-teman WALHI, kemudian PEKA, Perempuan Kepala Keluarga, kemudian Perkumpulan Ohana, LTKL, Lingkar Temu Kabupaten Lestari, kemudian ada teman-teman HWDI, Himpunan Wanita Disabilitas Indonesia, kemudian ada juga PPMN. Dalam kesempatan kali ini kami akan menyampaikan beberapa upaya yang kita lakukan terkait dukungan untuk masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan. Kelompok rentan dalam konteks ini kami definisikan menjadi beberapa kelompok ya, ada masyarakat adat, kemudian kelompok disabilitas, petani tanpa lahan, nelayan miskin, kelompok perhutanan sosial, perempuan kepala keluarga, kelompok transpuan, warga tanpa NIK, lansia, warga di wilayah terpencil, dan lain-lain. Next. Nah, pada masa pandemi, kelompok-kelompok ini memang rentan karena minim akses fasilitas dan layanan kesehatan. Mereka umumnya berada di wilayah terpencil. Dengan keterbatasan juga, mereka juga susah untuk mengakses layanan kesehatan, sehingga pada saat pandemi kondisi mereka sangat rentan. Ditambah lagi kemudian frekuensi kunjungan ke fasilitas kesehatan berkurang ya, karena mereka terbatas mobilisasinya, sehingga bagi teman-teman disabilitas, masyarakat adat tuh kemudian kerentanannya bertambah. Nah, yang jadi masalah juga sebagian besar mereka tidak punya catatan kesehatan ya, sehingga pada saat melakukan vaksinasi ini menjadi satu PR besar bagi kami untuk menyediakan dukungan tambahan dalam bentuk penyediaan pemeriksaan kesehatan pendahuluan. Yang lain juga penghasilan dan pendapatannya menurun pada saat pandemi. Ini juga berdampak pada upaya mereka ketika harus mengakses vaksin, layanan kesehatan yang lumayan jauh. Ini mereka tidak mampu, sehingga dalam banyak kasus kemudian tidak melakukan vaksinasi. Yang lain juga mereka punya kebutuhan dan persoalan yang khas ya. Jadi misalnya masyarakat adat itu mereka punya persoalan tadi ya, jarak tinggal di wilayah terpencil, karena itu memang ada kebutuhan untuk transportasi. Kemudian ada kebutuhan untuk pendampingan menjelaskan komorbid mereka, karena kalau tidak mereka tidak bisa menjelaskan komorbidnya. Begitu juga teman-teman disabilitas, mereka punya kebutuhan untuk didampingi oleh penerjemah bahasa isyarat, kemudian perlu didampingi juga, perlu dijemput dan lain-lain. Nah, ini yang tidak dipahami oleh pemerintah, sehingga pada saat awal vaksinasi untuk kelompok disabilitas itu minim sekali yang mengakses, karena kebutuhan-kebutuhan mereka yang sifatnya khas ini tidak dipahami dan tidak dipenuhi. Nah, dalam banyak kasus juga mereka ini tidak jadi prioritas ya, misalnya dalam kasus perhitungan soal prosentase vaksinasi yang sekarang dikatakan sudah lebih dari 80%. Kalau kita lihat cek di wilayah-wilayah terpencil itu bahkan banyak yang masih belum vaksin pertama. Apalagi vaksin kedua itu juga lumayan banyak. Nah, ini yang menjadi masalah juga. Nah, dalam menghadapi masalah ini mereka juga punya strategi mitigasi ya. Misalnya komunitas masyarakat adat itu menutup wilayah, mengurangi mobilitas, kemudian juga membuat cadangan pangan, pemanfaatan obat tradisional dan lain-lain. Nah, tentu untuk mengatasi kendala-kendala mereka ini, masalah yang mereka hadapi butuh kolaborasi dan kerjasama yang luar biasa. Karena ini, apalagi ini juga tidak disediakan dan tidak disupport oleh negara. Itu kenapa kemudian kami bergandengan tangan, bekerjasama dari lembaga-lembaga ini dalam rangka saling membantu untuk mendukung masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan. Next. Nah, ini beberapa yang kami lakukan pada saat membantu masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan dalam menghadapi pandemi. Pertama, penyediaan sarana dan peralatan, ya misalnya masker, oksigen, konsentrat, obat-obatan dan lain-lain di komunitas-komunitas adat itu banyak yang belum tersedia pada saat COVID Delta itu kita pontang-panting mencari oksigen konsentrat untuk didistribusikan ke berbagai daerah. Masker juga begitu, jadi kita drop ke berbagai wilayah terpencil agar mereka bisa menghadapi COVID. Kemudian yang terpenting juga edukasi mengenai COVID-19, protokol kesehatan dan pentingnya vaksinasi ini juga jadi PR besar, sehingga pada saat melakukan vaksinasi tidak bisa serta-merta kita melakukan vaksinasi, perlu ada upaya edukasi dulu, apalagi tantangan terbesar ada hoax ya. Jadi ini yang jadi masalah, sehingga edukasi harus dilakukan secara optimal. Yang perlu dilakukan juga kita minim sekali tools edukasi yang menggunakan bahasa mereka. Dan dalam banyak kasus edukasi juga tidak memperhatikan kebutuhan teman-teman disabilitas. Misalnya hanya disampaikan dalam bentuk tulisan, sementara ada kebutuhan untuk dalam bentuk suara dan lain-lain. Nah, itu yang membuat kami kemudian memproduksi berbagai tools komunikasi, diterjemahkan ke berbagai bahasa, begitu juga diproduksi dengan berbagai jenis dengan memperhatikan kebutuhan-kebutuhan kelompok rentan tadi. Nah, yang lain juga kami melakukan lobby, komunikasi dan koordinasi dengan pemerintah pusat dan daerah, khususnya dalam mengakses vaksin ya, karena dalam berbagai kesempatan itu stok vaksin susah diakses. Kita sebenarnya ada data terkait vaksin secara real time, tapi faktanya begitu kita cek di daerah sebenarnya tidak sesuai dengan data yang ada. Nah, karena itu kemudian kita intent melakukan lobby, melakukan koordinasi, dan juga melakukan advokasi terkait kebijakan. Salah satu yang menjadi tonggak keberhasilan kami adalah kita berhasil mendorong agar NIK, nomor induk kependudukan, itu tidak menjadi syarat mutlak. Karena pada saat awal itu menjadi syarat mutlak dan ada banyak teman-teman masyarakat adat dan kelompok disabilitas itu kemudian terhambat. Nah, setelah kita melakukan menyurati presiden, kemudian bertemu dengan kementerian, akhirnya itu difasilitasi ya, tidak menjadi syarat mutlak. Kemudian berkolaborasi juga dengan dinas kependudukan agar mereka bisa difasilitasi vaksin, tapi juga kemudian diurus NIK-nya. Yang lain kami juga berhasil mendorong pemakaian vaksin Johnson & Johnson, vaksin yang 1 kali suntik untuk 2 dosis ya, untuk masyarakat di wilayah terpencil, khususnya masyarakat adat. Karena kalau kita memakai 2 vaksin, 2 dosis itu biaya yang dibutuhkan luar biasa besar. Kita harus ke Mentawai, ke Sumba dan lain-lain, itu butuh biaya yang luar biasa besar. Kalau itu 2 kali bolak-balik 2 dosis, maka sekali lagi tantangannya luar biasa. Karena itu kemudian kami mendorong penggunaan Johnson & Johnson ini untuk wilayah-wilayah terpencil dan itu kemudian dipenuhi oleh pemerintah. Yang lain juga kita mendorong kolaborasi lintas sektor di berbagai daerah ya. Di Jawa Timur ada banyak kolaborasi, ada lembaga filantropi, kemudian teman-teman organisasi disabilitas, organisasi Muhammadiyah, NU dan lain-lain itu berkolaborasi bersama untuk melakukan sentra-sentra vaksinasi. Dengan demikian ini kegiatannya bisa disupport bersama-sama dan bisa meringankan biayanya. Yang lain juga kita melakukan dukungan data ya, ini juga penting. Kita share berbagai data sentra-sentra vaksinasi yang bisa diakses oleh masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan yang lain. Jadi di mana mereka bisa mengakses vaksin itu kami sampaikan datanya, kami sebar ke mereka, dan dalam setiap kesempatan kita selalu berkolaborasi. Misalnya Aman melakukan vaksinasi di Sumba, maka HWDI, kemudian KPA, Walhi juga mengerahkan semua anggotanya untuk memanfaatkan sentra-sentra vaksinasi itu. Selain itu juga ada sumber daya, kemudian relawan. Kita melibatkan banyak sekali relawan, terutama relawan kesehatan, dokter ya, untuk membantu pemeriksaan pendahuluan terutama. Karena pemeriksaan pendahuluan ini ada banyak disabilitas, masyarakat adat yang tidak bisa menjelaskan komorbidnya. Dan kalau mereka divaksin itu malah berbahaya. Jadi kita mendorong teman-teman relawan untuk membantu. Nah, yang lain juga mendorong akselerasi vaksinasi di berbagai daerah. Next. Nah, ini tantangan dan hambatannya. Pertama, minimnya pemahaman dan kesadaran sehingga kita perlu ada edukasi yang gencar. Nah, yang paling menantang adalah hoax ya. Karena hoaxnya ini luar biasa dan di berbagai daerah hoaxnya adalah dikaitkan dengan keagamaan. Ini kita temui terutama di Sumatera Barat, Aceh dan NTB. Misalnya ada hoax kalau Anda disuntik vaksin itu sholatnya tidak sah seumur hidup. Jadi ini betul-betul susah untuk ini, bahkan sudah dalam beberapa kesempatan dikaitkan dengan bantuan pemerintah, itu juga tidak berhasil juga. Di Aceh bahkan ada iming-iming door prize sampai sepeda motor, itu juga tidak berhasil juga karena saking kuatnya hoax bahwa ini haram, nanti kalau disuntik vaksin tidak sah seumur hidup sholatnya dan lain-lain. Nah ini kemudian kita gencar juga menggandeng kelompok agama untuk membantu kegiatan vaksinasi ini. Jadi mereka testimoni bahwa mereka sudah divaksin dan itu efektif di berbagai tempat. Kemudian sulitnya koordinasi dan mendapatkan dukungan Pemda, ini juga jadi masalah juga. Lokasi yang jauh dan terpencil, sekali lagi vaksinasi butuh sumber daya yang luar biasa, apalagi terpencil, sehingga dalam banyak kasus kita harus berjalan sampai berkilo-kilo ya untuk membawa vaksinnya, sampai naik perahu dan lain-lain, agar masyarakat adat dan yang teman-teman yang tinggal di wilayah terpencil itu bisa mengakses. Kemudian minimnya dukungan terhadap kebutuhan khusus, seperti saya bilang tadi ya, ada kebutuhan pemeriksaan pendahuluan, pendamping, itu nggak banyak yang bersedia membantu. Pemerintah taunya hanya divaksin, sementara ada kebutuhan pendahuluan untuk transportasi, menjemput mereka ya. Nah itu tidak dipahami. Nah itu yang kita kemudian upayakan secara bersama-sama, kolaborasi dengan banyak pihak. Misalnya beberapa lembaga amil zakat menyumbang ambulan, menyumbang beberapa kendaraan operasional, dan itu dipakai untuk antar jemput mereka. Nah yang lain juga data yang tidak lengkap dan out of date seperti tadi ya, data vaksin itu katanya real time, tapi dalam banyak kasus kita cek nggak ada barangnya ya, itu yang juga jadi masalah juga. Data disabilitas juga sama, kita susah sekali untuk mencari data yang lengkap dan lengkap yang dan up to date ya, terkini. Ketersediaan stok vaksin, dan yang menantang juga adalah ego sektoral. Misalnya dalam kasus vaksin Sinovac. Jadi sebelumnya ada vaksin hibah dari presiden ya, Sinovac, yang kemudian disuntikkan untuk disabilitas. Nah itu untuk vaksin kedua itu susah sekali karena vaksin Sinovacnya nggak ada. Ada, tapi itu vaksin gotong royong. Nah kami sudah mempertemukan antara dinas dengan Kimia Farma agar ini bisa dimanfaatkan. Tapi mentok karena beberapa dinas itu ngotot pencatatannya harus pakai piker pemerintah. Sementara Kimia Farma menggunakan piker gotong royong karena mereka harus diaudit. Nah ini yang saling bersikukuh sehingga kemudian yang dikorbankan adalah masyarakat. Ini yang lain adalah kebijakan yang tidak sinkron. Misalnya tadi vaksin Johnson itu mulia sekali karena itu 1 kali suntik. Tapi kemudian tidak diikuti oleh kebijakan terkait piker. Karena di pikernya itu tercatat sebagai 1 kali vaksin. Sehingga begitu mau booster mereka nggak bisa. Karena itu hanya vaksin, sementara itu vaksin tunggal gitu. Jadi kalau booster harus 1 dan 2. Nah Johnson itu tadi ya dia hanya 1. Nah itu yang jadi masalah, dan kami juga banyak dikomplain karena ada kebijakan di transportasi itu harus vaksin 1 dan 2. Sementara pikernya hanya vaksin 1. Jadi beberapa masyarakat adat yang sudah menerima Johnson akhirnya terpaksa harus antigen untuk bisa mengakses mengakses transportasi. Karena kalau mereka hanya tercatat 1, maka itu memang syaratnya harus antigen. Kalau tidak antigen harus 1 dan 2 atau booster. Nah itu beberapa yang jadi tantangan. Nah terakhir ini yang menjadi PR dan akan kita lakukan di masa mendatang. Next. Pertama, memastikan keterwakilan dan ketercakupan kelompok rentan dalam kebijakan penanganan COVID-19. Misalnya dalam indikator kita masuk dari pandemi ke endemi. Itu salah satu indikatornya adalah misalnya di atas 80%. Nah pemerintah tidak menegaskan bahwa itu termasuk di dalamnya kelompok rentan ya, karena kalau tidak di-divide sedemikian rupa itu ditinggal, betul-betul ditinggal. Sekarang pemerintah bicara vaksin booster, vaksin keempat ya. Sementara kelompok-kelompok rentan itu bahkan vaksin 2 aja masih belum. teman-teman disabilitas yang menerima Sinovac itu banyak yang sampai sekarang belum vaksin kedua. Nah itu yang jadi tantangan. Jadi kalaupun ada kebijakan, kita ingin memastikan kelompok disabilitas, kelompok rentan itu termasuk di dalamnya, termasuk juga masyarakat adat. Yang lain juga memastikan keterlibatan kelompok rentan dalam penyusunan peta jalan transisi pandemi ke endemi. Ini yang kita mendengar bahwa sudah disusun dan kita berharap masyarakat adat, kelompok rentan juga tercakup di dalamnya. Kemudian meningkatkan kesadaran untuk vaksin lengkap. Ini sekarang jadi tantangan karena motivasi masyarakat sudah turun, menganggap bahwa COVID sudah selesai. Kami masih melakukan vaksinasi di banyak tempat, tapi tantangannya sudah nggak banyak yang antusias dan berkeinginan untuk memanfaatkan vaksinasi. Kemudian mempertahankan perilaku hidup sehat warisan pandemi. Jadi kita sudah investasi luar biasa ya untuk ada kebiasaan pakai masker, cuci tangan. Tapi sekarang sudah mulai luntur lagi. Nah ini yang kami sekarang mulai menggerakkan lagi agar warisan pandemi ini bisa terus kita pertahankan dan dipraktekkan. Nah terakhir memastikan skema pembiayaan vaksinasi yang berpihak pada masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan di masa endemi. Pada saat endemi kita nggak tahu nih, apakah masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan itu apakah harus membayar sendiri atau tetap disupport oleh pemerintah. Nah ini yang kita perlu pastikan bahwa nanti skema pembiayaannya berpihak pada mereka. Saya kira demikian. Saya ingin menutup presentasi dengan satu video pendek, cuman 1 menit, untuk memberikan gambaran bagaimana dinamika vaksinasi, penanganan COVID, khususnya vaksinasi di masyarakat adat dan kelompok rentan. Silakan. Ini vaksinasi di Mentawai ya. Perahunya sempat terbalik. Terima kasih, mudah-mudahan bermanfaat. Selamat malam, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Mas Hamid Abidin. Please give one more applause to Mas Hamid Abidin. I'm sure most of you interested with the hoax, and yeah, what Mas Hamid presented to us is improve that the civil society roles in the vaccination and also in the pandemic is important to us, and to put the civil society and it's important to put civil society representative in every pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Thank you, Mas Hamid Abidin. We have one more speakers in this session, Mbak Arshinta from Yakkum. Mbak Arshinta will deliver the topics related to disability and elderly access to COVID-19 tools. We note that the elderly and disabilities have been included in the Mas Hamid's presentation, but we will hear more the challenges access to COVID-19 tools for disability and elderly. Mbak Arshinta, can you hear us? Mbak Arshinta joining us online. Okay, yes. Mbak Arshinta, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but wait, please wait for a while because the screen is not the Zoom. Okay, thank you, Mbak Arshinta. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Mas Agung. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, colleagues and friends. it's quite challenging for me to present my sharing because my colleagues, Bang Daniel and Mas Hamidin already did a very fantastic job. I think I better to take you down to the field to show the reality so that you can sense some flavor of the field, especially from some colleagues that are coming from abroad. So I will ask the committee to play the video, please.
Kegiatan vaksinasi ini untuk menjangkau kelompok-kelompok rentan. Jadi kelompok-kelompok rentan ini memang kita butuhkan terjangkau karena apa? Karena dia merupakan kelompok rentan yang harus dilindungi, tetapi mungkin aksesnya terhadap vaksinasi ini belum bisa optimal.
Di bulan Juli hingga September 2021, cakupan vaksinasi di DIY masih relatif kecil. 40,53% warga telah divaksinasi di bulan Juli, 57,27% di bulan Agustus, dan 81,94% di bulan September.
Teman-teman yang lansia, kemudian teman-teman difabel itu entah susah mengaksesnya, entah tidak dapat informasinya atau tidak tahu, terutama bahkan ada yang menolak vaksin karena informasinya belum dapat. Jadi itulah kenapa kami ingin menyasar kelompok most at risk yang benar-benar terpinggirkan atau belum mendapat akses.
Misalnya saja lansia, banyak lansia kemudian komorbid. Mereka harus stay di rumah, mereka bed rest, mereka nggak bisa kemana-mana. Kemudian yang kedua itu disabilitas. Dengan berbagai hambatan, baik itu hambatan tuli, hambatan netra, hambatan sensorik, dan sebagainya. Mereka kesulitan juga mobilisasi karena jalan untuk ke puskesmas itu juga cukup jauh.
Kami beruntung sekali dalam kesempatan program ini, kami juga istilahnya bisa melibatkan berbagai pihak, kita sebutnya pentahelix. Jadi pemerintah pasti dengan Dinkes, kemudian ada puskesmas, kemudian kami sempat berkolaborasi dengan militer juga. Kemudian ada akademisi, jadi ada teman-teman dari Stikes, Bethesda juga membantu kami dalam rangka screeningnya atau bahkan tenaga vaksinatornya. Kemudian ada media juga membantu kami. Kami ormas, termasuk ormas, dan kemudian ada kader, ada pemerintah, desa, juga tokoh agama, tokoh masyarakat itu membantu kami. Plus kami juga ada kesempatan berkolaborasi dengan private sector.
Nah, bagaimana juga di dalam respon ini sehingga yang dilibatkan itu tidak hanya teman-teman yang kemudian masyarakat saja seperti kader gitu, kemudian satgas desa, tetapi kita juga melibatkan dari organisasi-organisasi disabilitas yang ada di Jogja. Contohnya seperti Gerkatin. Kita juga bekerja sama dengan VAGH.
Kalau dari awal, pertama pasti kan kita teman-teman relawan itu nyiapin peralatannya. Jadi kayak misalnya tensi atau termogan. Setelah itu mungkin beberapa ada yang kita harus ke dinas kesehatan untuk ngambil vaksinasi. Tapi beberapa tuh ada yang kita cuman perlu ke puskesmas untuk ngambil vaksinasinya. Nah, setelah itu baru kita mungkin ketemuan sama Pak Dukuh atau kader yang ada di lokasi untuk nunjukin tempat-tempat yang akan divaksin lah istilahnya. Nah, setelah itu baru kami, teman-teman relawan, berangkat untuk vaksinasi door-to-door itu. Selama vaksin berlangsung itu, tantangan yang sering dihadapin itu, yang pertama pasti medan. Kadang itu karena kita door to door, jadi kita nggak tahu medannya itu seperti apa. Kadang ada yang harus naik turun gunung, ada yang hujan-hujan juga kayak gitu. Jadi mungkin tantangan terbesarnya medan. Kemudian yang kedua itu kadang ketika kita udah sampai di rumahnya, itu tensi dari orang yang akan divaksin itu tinggi. Jadi mau nggak mau kita tunggu atau bahkan nggak bisa divaksin sama sekali. Kalau untuk teman-teman ODDP, mungkin kita ngobrol sama pendampingnya ya untuk diberitahu kalau kita mau melaksanain vaksin yang kayak gitu. Atau mungkin kita juga minta tolong kader atau Pak Dukuhnya itu untuk memberitahukan ke ODDP-nya kalau kita akan mengadakan vaksin. Kemudian kalau untuk teman-teman disabilitas, kita juga ada kerjasama dengan JBI atau Gerkatin atau JP atau Gerkatin itu. Nanti mereka yang ngebantu kita untuk komunikasi sama teman-teman yang difabel itu.
Saya di sini membawa teman-teman YEU ke tempat-tempat yang menjadi sasaran vaksin hari ini. Di mana teman-teman YEU belum tahu lokasi rumah orang-orang yang perlu divaksin. Jadi, saya mengajak dan mendampingi tim YEU ke rumah orang-orang tersebut, karena saya yang tahu lokasi rumah peserta vaksinasi ini.
Kalau saya terlibatnya terutama di pendampingan, Mas. Selain di pendampingan, saya juga mencari data teman-teman yang untuk divaksinasi.
Jadi vaksinasi nggak bisa satu orang, harus secara komunitas. Kalau komunitasnya terpenuhi vaksinasinya, harapannya dia bisa memberikan kekebalan bagi yang lainnya. Gitu. Kalaupun nanti kelompok-kelompok rentan ini terpapar, ya mereka udah punya antibodi. Harapannya di situ. Udah aksesnya sulit, tinggalnya di tempat seperti ini ya, akses kesehatan susah didapatkan. Sayang sekali kalau mereka kena COVID, gejala berat, ngangkutnya aja udah susah gitu. Jadi kita masuk ke upaya preventifnya, pencegahannya sih.
Mencegah penyakit patuh sehat. Saniki nggih boten wonten pripun nggih biasa kados sebab sedereng divaksin. Nggih sekeca. Yuk disuntik niku rak dilase sak keto. Niku yuk Pak nggih boleh boten lara meneh.
Boten ngeras menapa-menapa. Kadang boten nenten keluhan kene. Ae.
Sejak September 2021 hingga Februari 2022, program vaksinasi YEU telah menjangkau 6.714 orang tanpa disabilitas dan 130 orang dengan disabilitas.
Harapannya sih semoga vaksinasi ini bisa terus berlangsung ya, karena untuk masyarakatnya yang masih belum bisa terjangkau. Kemudian mungkin juga edukasi yang lebih mendalam sih untuk keluarga-keluarga yang masih menolak vaksin, seperti itu.
Kalau harapannya untuk secara khusus ke teman-teman disabilitas itu untuk bisa tervaksin semua ya. Baik mereka yang tidak bisa mobilitas maupun sudah bisa mobilitas, karena banyak teman-teman kita yang tidak bisa mobilitas akhirnya mereka tidak tervaksin. Alhamdulillah kita ada pendukung dari YEU, kita bisa melaksanakan door to door. Harapan kami untuk kedepannya tidak hanya dari YEU tapi dari lembaga-lembaga lain yang bisa membantu kami untuk vaksinasi secara door to door.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. Can we back to the slide, please? I believe that some of the learning, some of the challenges, and as well as the solutions are quite similar to what Bang Daniel and Pak Abidin has said. But I would like to highlight some of the things. Can you get to the second? Yeah, the next. The context is quite obvious that this is done in Yogyakarta, that the place, as Bang Daniel said, in Java after Jakarta, Yogyakarta was the second worst affected province, so especially during Delta period, because the population is quite dense. And that happened in the context of this province. Next, please. And at that time, Yakkum done a kind of experiment. We collaborated some organizations, academic institutions, hospitals, as well as NGO and DPO, as well as faith-based organizations. And with that collaborations, we provided what so-called hotline services, but it is connected directly to the shelter, but as well as to the hospital if the patients or the infected persons get serious and need some medications and also referral. And at that time, the program was equipped with some of the capacity building and supporting the COVID patients, not only as similar to Pak Abidin said, it's not only a medication side, but also support them to get the day-by-day need or livelihood. Next, please. Yes, and some of the challenges and solution you can see in the presentation because it has will be shared to you. But I will get directly to the last slide, in which I would like to highlight 3 learnings. Yeah, it can you get please to the last sessions, the last slide. All those are quite similar, but the learning is that the key role of CSO in accelerating pentahelic approach is very, very obvious. This should be, I hope it should be mandatory in the next pandemic response to include CSO, because unless they are requesting coordinations and synergy, it hardly happen in the field. So we cannot take for granted that CSO will be the one that pulling everyone on the same decks for coordinations, but it has to be put in the place, put in the policy that they are the key actors and they have to be involved and also invited. And the engagement of at least group is very, very key. And I think one of the concrete key asks that we have to put in the table to the G20 leaders is that that engagement should be embedded in the coordination structure, in the budget allocation, and because in one hand they need reasonable accommodations, but their presence, their knowledge, and their participation will enhance pandemic response. And the last thing is about the local partnership. Local partnership is proven effective from the presentations from Bang Daniel, from Pak Abidin. It is very obvious that they hit the target accurately and inclusively. So I hope this give G20 members ability and clarity to prioritize their development cooperations in policy in the future has to prioritize this local partnership. They do not only prioritize the support for G2G corporations, but they also have to prioritize the local partnership model because it is proven effective. Thank you, Mas Agung. I hope in the short of time it's give you some of information how person with disability, elderly, well accommodated in our response. Thank you.
Give applause to Mbak Arshinta. Yeah, actually Mbak Arshinta present the short slides of presentation, but what she did with her organization is more than that. It's so nice, so beautiful. What's the civil society roles in the improve the vaccination and give the access, help to access to society and especially to vulnerable groups. Thank you. This plenary session 1 is over. We already hear our 4 speakers and we take notes what their recommendation and what their problem, the current challenges in the vulnerable groups, and we can make this discussion to become the base of our recommendation to the next our recommendation to the 3rd health working groups meeting. Actually, we will start this plenary session 2, but I will give you a little bit break because because we already ran out of time. I think we will have 5 minutes breaks for you to take smokes. Only one smoke, I think, in 5 minutes, right? I'm so sorry, but we ran out of time. But so okay, 5 minutes. Take a short break and give us. Please enjoy the coffee break and also the coffee and the snacks that we provide. We will start the second plenary. Soon. Thank you. Zoom because we have some technical problem in the room. Okay, thank you so much for joining this plenary session 2, Vaccine Access and Global Health Working Groups meeting. On this plenary session 2, we will discuss around the challenging in access to COVID-19 tools and how G20 addressed this problem. We already have 4 speakers in this room, 2 speakers in this room and 2 speakers in the joint Zoom meeting. For the first, we have Lanz Espacio from People's Vaccine Alliance. For the second, we have Gopakumar from Third World Network. We have Agus from Transparency International Indonesia, and we have Ananya Basu from Public Services International. We will start soon from the first speakers. We already have Lanz Espacio from People's Vaccines Alliance. Lanz will deliver the topics related to COVID-19 tools as public goods. Related to People's Vaccine Alliance, work a lot on to push the vaccine and others COVID-19 tools as public goods. Lanz, please, the floor is yours.
Recording in progress.
Please wait while we are we have some problem with the presentation. Please wait for a while. Okay.
Great. It's working now.
Can it present it in Zoom? Okay. Yeah.
Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. As Agung had shared, my name is Lanz Espacio. I am the Regional Campaign Coordinator for the People's Vaccine Alliance in Asia. Thank you for having me here. I'm a Filipino national, by the way. I'm not Indonesian because I always get mistaken for as Indonesian here. Anyway, so it's really a pleasure to meet faces in person. For the longest time, we've been meeting online, and having this connection, I think, is really important for us, especially as those working towards a collective response to the many of the problems that we're facing as organizations. So my presentation today will be hopefully short. I only have about 7 slides here. I will be speaking on what we have long considered as one of our advocacy points as a PVA, as a People's Vaccine Alliance, which is to treat COVID-19 tools as public goods, not as private property or as commodities that need to be, to be seen for profit and not for people. So I'd like to set the context, next slide please, in terms of the true cost of the pandemic, right? This is based on some of our analysis within the People's Vaccine Alliance. Just to share with you some figures. No? For example, for every life lost in a rich nation, another 4 people have died in a poorer country. People in poorer nations are 1.3 times more likely to die as a result of the pandemic compared to rich countries. The poorest people and those from minority ethnic groups are more likely to bear the brunt of pandemic death, and about 160 million people have been pushed into poverty because of the lockdowns due to the pandemic, while the 10 richest men doubled their fortunes at the same time. What we've seen during the pandemic is really egregious, deep inequalities and divides between those who have and those who have not during the pandemic. And the cost to lives, socially and economically, are more felt, no, by people living in low middle income countries than those living in rich countries. The official global death toll, as it stands based on formal estimates, is about now 6.3 million people. This is widely underestimated because many of, for example, the deaths, past the initial testing, based on some modeling we did within the PVA, about 19.6 million people, based on the modeling that we did, have died, 3 times more than the official death toll. No? So these are numbers. These are real and hard and fast facts and figures. But we do know also anecdotal stories of loved ones who have died. Next slide, please. In this country, we've seen last year images of mass graves in Indonesia, in India. That is the same. These go beyond figures, numbers. These are real people's lives, someone's family, someone's loved one, who, because of multitude of factors, have passed due to the pandemic. We need not, we know of that experience, as we have, most of us have experienced that or witnessed that on the news. And so what I think is a question, especially for those advocating for a people's vaccine, is how did we get to this point of immense loss of human life and economic catastrophe that a lot of people, especially in the global south, have experienced in the past due to the pandemic. Next slide, please. So again, how did we get here? In our understanding, in our making sense of what had happened during this pandemic, let's take a look back at the beginning of the pandemic. I think now we have a bit of sense of maybe the pandemic is already over, but let's take a step back and look at what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, and how did we get to this point, to those images that I've previously flashed on the screen. At the beginning of the pandemic, so $100 billion were invested in pharma companies for vaccine development and manufacturing. A majority of these funds came from the public, from taxpayers' money. Those taxpayers in the UK, in the United States, for example, with the intention of, fast generating these vaccines that had a public importance, for an immediate response. The COVAX facility was also developed at the early stage of the pandemic. And a lot of speakers have already spoken to some success, with regard to the COVAX facility. And the COVAX facility, just for being on the same page about it, intended really to generate enough supply of vaccines for everyone. And really just the idea behind the COVAX facility is good, in a sense that, okay, it was intended to be a global facility in order to produce all these vaccines, supposedly to allocate, especially to those who need them the most. But what we've seen as the COVAX facility was also being implemented, eventually it was wealthy countries who skipped the queue and jumped the line, because they had more funding put into the COVAX facility. It had a variety of funding sources, but most of its money comes from wealthy member countries who were in actual fact, no, making down payments so that they would receive future vaccine shipments. No, it also in some ways directed also private money from to private organizations. Therefore, the bulk of the purchasing program would supposedly allow smaller nations to get the vaccines at the same price as larger countries. But that didn't happen. No? COVAX struggled in providing immediate vaccine supplies to in lower and middle income countries, because rich countries also jumped the queue, no, and purchased directly from the pharmaceutical companies, and therefore got the large share of the vaccine supply. In fact, for every dose of mRNA vaccine delivered to low-income countries, 56 were delivered to rich countries. Now, rich countries were practicing what is now known as vaccine nationalism, acting out of their self-interest and hoarding much of the vaccine supply, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. As a result, pharmaceutical companies made the most out of this in terms of profits. The most profitable vaccine companies together made $4 million per hour in pre-tax profit from the vaccine. Next slide, please. Already the WHO recognizes this as a condition, no, of how we have begun. We responded to the pandemic. This concept of vaccine nationalism. Dr. Tedros explains that vaccine nationalism might serve short-term political goals, that is, hoarding vaccine supplies for their own constituency. But it's in every nation's own medium and long-term economic interest to support vaccine equity across the world. Until we end the pandemic everywhere, Dr. Tedros says, we won't end it anywhere. As we speak, rich countries are rolling out vaccines while the world's least developed countries watch and wait. Every day that passes, the divide grows larger between the world's haves and have-nots. No? And the previous speakers have spoken much about this in Africa, for example. That remains to be a problem in some, when we look at Asia, most of our countries at the aggregate, at the national level, we have high vaccination rates, but we cannot say the same for regions or provinces or specific localities within our own countries, and that previous speakers have already spoken to that point. So in conclusion, next slide please, we see that the G20 is a space where we can put forward some of our positions, towards a better response to the current and to future pandemics. Repeatedly, we've heard that the G20 isn't really a binding institution. It is, as we've heard also from several people, simply a forum where 20 governments come together. But we've also seen that this forum, this G20 forum, has also can generate some political and moral will to determine some of the global responses, for example, on financing and some conversations on decentralizing global manufacturing. So we do still see this as a space worth engaging in. We are calling, therefore, on the G20 now that in future pandemics, all peoples should receive countermeasures, including safe, effective, and free vaccines at the time when they need it. And that nobody is pushed back to the queue, as has been the case in the initial vaccine supply production we've seen at the beginning of the pandemic. Concretely, we demand that the G20 also learn from the faults of the global mechanisms that were set up to respond to the pandemic. There are a lot of lessons learned, as also speakers have spoken about, on the Act A, on COVAX, and other global mechanisms created to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We also think that G20 is also in a position to recognize, at the very least, that trade and intellectual property rules are barriers to the meaningful transfer and pooling of medical technologies. Also, for governments to reject for-profit corporate pharmaceutical influence in the production of health tools, which should be, in the end, seen as global public goods, and also investing in local manufacturing capacity, tech transfer hubs, and pooling of medical technologies. what this forum can also look into is also the leadership of Global South countries. I think there also is a space for that, and that's something we're also following closely as we're looking at the G20, right? What I'd like to highlight in conclusion and in the end is that this work of decentralizing global manufacturing is already being done. No? Dr. Petro at the beginning of this session also spoke about the work being done in South Africa. What we can say, it is possible. What is also needed is also strong political and moral will on the part of governments in order to replicate and to expand the work that is already being done, and it makes economic sense. No? And Dr. Petro had shared a lot of concrete proposals in that regard. It also, again, we're not limited to the G20 forum as the People's Vaccine Alliance. We do see that there is also a need to change existing global rules. They are unfit for the pandemic, for an effective pandemic response. And therefore, we should also look at processes, for example, at the pandemic treaty being negotiated at the United Nations, at the UNGA, to articulate a better vision for a more equitable health system and all these spaces that we're also advocating for this. And finally, just speaking on the point of what the previous panelists have also mentioned about the role of civil society and also the role of communities in all of these. We stand with you in acknowledging that and in pushing forward in that regard when we're having conversations about pandemic preparedness, recovery, and response. So we do hope that finally, next slide, that all these conversations would only work if they work with us. Us working in civil society, us working most closely with communities. And if you would like to join this campaign, please feel free to reach out to me. We're more than happy to have you on board in this campaign. Thank you very much, and good evening.
Well, give applause to Lanz Espacio from People's Vaccine Alliance. Make it work with us. Make it work with us, because nothing about us without us. That's what's the point Lanz mentioned in the last sentence. It's a strong, full sentence and meaningful sentence from for us. And the next we have Lanz already mentioned about the IP barriers as the COVID-19 tools access, and we note that this it's already happened more than 2 decades since the TRIPS agreement agreed in the WTO regime. So we already work in this case more than 2 decades, and this pandemic we push the government on the WTO to waive the TRIPS. And giving access to all COVID-19 tools. But what happened in the few months ago related to what the WTO Ministerial Conference are so disappointed for us. So what we need to do for the next, after the WTO decision and also related to the TRIPS agreement, it will be delivered by Gopakumar from Third World Networks. Gopakumar is expertise in the TRIPS agreement and also have some brief papers and also a lot of publication related to the TRIPS. Gopa, can you hear us? We will wait for Gopa and also technical problem maybe. Okay, Gopa, we can hear you, but we still have problem to see your screen. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Please, the screen is yours now.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just start with the logic behind the TRIPS waiver proposal. What was the context of the TRIPS waiver proposal? The most important thing we should keep it in mind was that prior to the outbreak of pandemic, there was a high concentration of production and supply of various medical products. So to give you an example, 80% of the global value of vaccines were controlled by 5 companies. Around 70% of the medical equipment supply were coming from just 4 countries. But it was an unprecedented outbreak of disease, which we required a range of health products or medical products. We did face like global outbreak of HIV or H1N1 or avian flu, but the number of medical products required to combat that particular emergencies were limited. But here you need diagnostics, vaccines, medicines, imaging equipments, then sanitizers, gloves, PPE. The range of products were many, and there was concentration of production and supply. The outbreak basically resulted in a surge in demand, and many countries do not have the manufacturing capabilities. So as a result of this, there was a need to scale up the production. How the scale up can happen? Through the diversification of the manufacturing base. So that basically takes me to the second issue. How do you diversify the manufacturing base? You need to plan, machineries, equipments, finance, and various other things. But with regard to all those elements, states have relatively good policy space to put those things in place. If you do not have an financial resources for a particular company or a public sector, the government could finance to set it up. But there was one important problem where the government's hands were tied, that is related to intellectual property rights. Because many of these health products were one or other way protected through intellectual property rights. And the policy space related to intellectual property rights were very, very limited due to TRIPS agreement. As a result, you need a solution to this problem. The traditional solution was mainly to make use of the flexibilities existing in the TRIPS agreement. That is mainly using the compulsory license. But here, there is a particular problem. The range of products which you require to combat pandemic is protected through different types of intellectual property rights. The use of flexibility is by and large limited to the patents protection. Second, no, it is not the question of scaling up of the production, but also you need policy space, or you need the freedom of operation to make use of the many IP protected technologies to innovate new products. So in these two contexts, intellectual property became a barrier. So the idea is to give a waiver or a temporary suspension that will give the enough policy space or the freedom of operation for the manufacturers as well as innovators to come up with the to address the product deficiency question. So that was the logic behind the TRIPS waiver. And one more related issue: all these products, sometimes the patent might be important. The patent is an important way of IP protection related to medicines, vaccines, and to an extent on diagnostics. But when it comes to PPE, design might be a problem. And when it comes to diagnostics, especially when it is using the software, the copyright might be an issue. Then vaccines, apart from patents, there is a trade secret. Even biotherapeutics trade secret is an issue. So as a result, you need flexibilities with a wide range of intellectual property rights, including copyrights. Copyright is, traditionally viewed it as something related to films, books, etc. But now you know that copyright is very much critical to produce many diagnostic platforms or even wearables, etc. So this proposal was submitted, and the world then witnessed an unprecedented rallying around this proposal, and TVA played a major role in mobilizing various opinion makers, Nobel laureates, heads of the government, various set of people aligned to support this proposal. But irrespective of that, what the outcome is very much disappointing, because it waives only one part of an article of the TRIPS agreement. The proponents ask for a waiver of all the relevant provisions related to protection and enforcement of patents, designs, copyright, and trade secret. What we got is now only a waiver of a 31 bis or 31F of the TRIPS agreement, which allows exporter to issue a compulsory license exclusively for export purposes. So that takes, let me just explain that point. Article 31F of the TRIPS agreement basically prohibits countries from issuing a compulsory license for export purposes. Whenever you issue a compulsory license, that should be used predominantly for the domestic market. So as a result, if a country who do not have, that's the reality, majority of the countries do not have the manufacturing capabilities. They have to depend upon some other country for compulsory to ensure the supply through compulsory license. If the export under compulsory license is prohibited, then it would be extremely difficult for these countries to source the product, though they issue a compulsory license. So the 31 bis, that's an amendment to the TRIPS agreement, provides some solutions, but it is imposing so many conditions, so it becomes very difficult to use. So this waiver allows to waive the conditions under 31 bis as well as 31F. So you can now issue a compulsory license exclusively for export purposes, but still there are certain conditions. These conditions are problematic still, but they are not as problematic as in the 31 bis. But if you issue a compulsory license for the domestic purpose, still you have to follow the TRIPS agreement. So I am not getting into the details due to the paucity of time, but what we learned is that even during a pandemic, developed countries and even the pharmaceutical companies are not ready to waive their intellectual property rights. So what will we do in the coming days to address this issue? So the first thing, though this TRIPS waiver outcome is disappointing in the sense that the scope is very limited, as I mentioned to you already, but it mobilized public opinion that intellectual property is a problematic thing. And unprecedented campaign happened, and it exposed the double standards of many developed countries. And it also in a way forced some of the developed countries like US, which earlier used to exert political pressure on developing countries whenever they used to issue a compulsory license. So now the US is saying that you can use compulsory license. So EU also set the same line. Instead of a waiver, let's all use compulsory license. So that's a way, to an extent, the use of flexibilities got legitimized. But that's not enough. The problem is not resolved here, because the use of flexibilities always depending upon at least two things. One is your own technological capability, and second, use of flexibility is always subject to bilateral political pressure from developing countries. So therefore, we need much more effective solution, and we need to look at the limitations of the TRIPS agreement. And people have already started talking about the dismantling of the TRIPS agreement. I think should aim that, and there is enough evidence to show that this agreement is not working to achieve its purpose, and profits of the pharmaceutical companies. So this is the time we should galvanize our energy to move forward in that. And another important thing, there is a pandemic instrument which is under negotiation, and international health regulation is under negotiation. These is an opportunity to introduce legally binding obligation on countries whenever there is a public health emergency of international concern, or whenever there is a pandemic. There should be an automatic suspension of the TRIPS obligation, or the countries should automatically suspend the intellectual property rights. So therefore, they can scale up the production, or through the diversification of the manufacturing base of these health products. So this we need to campaign, and we need to ensure that countries should demand this and to get incorporated in the these new two instruments. And thirdly, what we also require is that when it comes to vaccines, the regulatory system, which indirectly act as an enforcement agency for the trade secret, by saying that if you are not obtaining the manufacturing process from the originating companies, you are supposed to prove the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. That means, though you have the technological capability to reverse engineer the vaccine, you are not in a position to produce the vaccine, because the regulatory agencies put you an onerous condition to prove the safety and efficacy through clinical trials. This is the case with the majority of the vaccines. So this has little scientific basis, and we need to reform the regulatory framework, which would allow an accelerated pathway for non-originator vaccine production. So these are the three things I would like to place it here to ensure equity in vaccine. And as far as medicines are concerned, we know that in many countries, if the compulsory license is issued, it can be produced. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopa. Thank you, Gopa. We need to, we note some point. We need to do more campaign. Use every opportunity that we have, includes the G20, G7, etc., to push the government in developing countries to wear the TRIPS flexibilities, and also still push the wave of the IP barriers, because IP barrier is so problematic thing. Then we need to address it more. One of the problematic things impact by the IP barriers is the transparency of the vaccine access and COVID-19 tools. So for the next speaker, we will hear the problem in transparency in COVID-19's procurement. We already have Mas Agus Sarwono from TI Indonesia by online. Sorry, yeah. Mas Agus Sarwono already joined with us. Are you here us in the Zoom? Mas Agus Sarwono from Transparency International Indonesia.
Halo, selamat malam Mas Agung.
Okay, we
Selamat
hear you
malam,
very
teman-teman.
well. Please wait. We still wait the screen. Okay, we can hear you now, and we see you clearly now. Please, Mas Agus, the screen is yours.
Baik, terima kasih Mas Agung dan teman-teman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Semoga kita dalam keadaan sehat selalu, dan semoga pertemuan ini menjadi banyak manfaat begitu teman-teman. Saya izin untuk share screen gitu terkait isu yang akan saya bawakan kali ini, bicara soal pengadaan dalam konteks penanganan pandemi begitu. Nah, sepanjang penanganan pandemi, Transparansi Internasional tentu tidak sendiri begitu. Transparansi Internasional Indonesia tidak sendiri. Kami bersama jaringan masyarakat sipil yang lain, baik di konteks nasional sampai dengan konteks daerah begitu. Dan kami mengawalnya sejak pernyataan bahwa kedaruratan COVID dilakukan gitu. Dan berdasarkan pengalaman gitu sampai dengan paling tidak sampai dengan akhir tahun lalu begitu, banyak sekali informasi pengadaan penanganan pandemi khususnya di konteks pengadaan vaksin, informasinya sangat terbatas begitu. Saya bisa lanjut untuk slide berikutnya, mohon maaf. Ini postur anggaran sepanjang 2020 dan 2021 begitu. Kalau kita lihat trennya mengalami kenaikan sangat wajar sebetulnya karena kebutuhan vaksin sangat besar sekali. Tapi sayangnya alokasi yang begitu besar itu tidak diimbangi dengan prinsip keterbukaan informasi begitu ya. Bahkan kalau teman-teman ingat begitu, dalam konteks pengadaan alat kesehatan ketika di 2020 begitu, temuan BPK itu sangat banyak sekali bahwa ketidaksesuaian spesifikasi pengadaan rapid test COVID-19 begitu di tahap 1 dan tahap 2. Kalau tidak salah angkanya mencapai 363,3 miliar gitu. Dan tentu juga hal ini berdampak pada pemborosan anggaran gitu ya. Dan selanjutnya mohon maaf. Nah, ini dalam konteks pengadaan vaksin memang berbeda dengan pengadaan pada umumnya begitu ya. Dalam secara prinsip bahwa pengadaan di Indonesia memang diatur begitu ya dalam Perpres Perpres 16 tahun 2018 gitu ya, beserta perubahannya begitu. Di pasal 61 begitu disebutkan bahwa ada pengadaan yang memang dikecualikan. Nah, pengadaan vaksin COVID-19 merupakan pengadaan yang dikecualikan sehingga muncul Perpres 99 2020 beserta turunannya begitu. Dan ada 3 metode pengadaan vaksin. Pertama melalui penugasan PT Bio Farma, kemudian penunjukan langsung badan usaha dan juga kerjasama internasional. Silakan dilanjut, mohon maaf. Nah, berdasarkan tracking yang kami lakukan sepanjang 2020 sampai dengan akhir 2021, kita melihat ada 98 kali begitu vaksin dalam pembelian langsung yang datang ke Indonesia, dan juga ada 44 kali dari COVAX Facility, dan juga ada 28 kali vaksin kedatangan yang ke Indonesia berdasarkan dari sumber dari hibah dari negara-negara tetangga begitu. Nah, kemudian berdasarkan hasil tracking yang kami lakukan juga, setidaknya di slide berikutnya ada total begitu ya, total vaksin yang hadir sampai dengan 28 Desember 2021 itu mencapai 451 juta dosis begitu. Next slide, mohon maaf. Nah, ini terlihat di sini ada 451 juta dosis dengan baik yang dari CoronaVac, baik bahan baku maupun juga vaksin jadi AstraZeneca sampai dengan Johnson & Johnson. Selanjutnya. Nah, ketika bicara soal vaksin, tentu akan bicara soal logistik program vaksinasi. Berdasarkan catatan kami, ada 10 begitu alat pendukung program vaksinasi. Nah, berdasarkan tracking yang kami lakukan sepanjang 2021, kami hanya menemukan ada 33 begitu ya soal rencana pengadaan vaksin terkait soal program vaksinasi. Kami menduga selebihnya dilakukan dengan cara-cara pengadaan darurat begitu. Nah, di sisi lain ketika proses pengadaannya dilakukan secara darurat, sayangnya pemerintah dalam hal ini Kementerian Kesehatan tidak melakukan pencatatan gitu. Di dalam slide selanjutnya mohon maaf, sekali lagi mohon maaf. Nah, ini kita hanya menemukan ada sekitar 33-nya sebagai potret saja pengadaan logistik pendukung program vaksinasi. Nah, jika dilihat di poin paling atas begitu ya, ada subdom terkait soal pencatatan pengadaan darurat. Sayangnya sepanjang 2021 Kementerian Kesehatan hanya sekali mencatatkan, di slide selanjutnya terlihat sekali di sana. Bahkan sampai dengan hari ini begitu, itu hanya satu gitu ya pengadaan darurat yang memang dicatatkan oleh teman-teman di Kementerian Kesehatan. Lagi-lagi prosesnya memang dipermudah, tapi sayangnya proses pencatatannya tidak dilakukan. Selanjutnya, nah Transparansi Internasional dengan beberapa jaringan itu mencoba untuk melakukan pendalaman gitu ya terkait soal risiko korupsi dan fraud terkait soal program vaksinasi, mulai dari pengadaan begitu. Setidaknya kami menemukan ada potensi konflik kepentingan dalam proses pengadaan barang berupa vaksin dan juga logistik pendukung vaksinasi begitu. Ada juga asimetri informasi yang menyebabkan harga menjadi lebih mahal. Bahkan sepanjang 2020 sampai dengan setidaknya Maret gitu ya, Maret 2021, pemerintah dalam hal ini Kementerian Kesehatan tidak membuka informasi begitu secara jelas begitu harga satuan per dosis vaksinasi sampai pada akhirnya kalau tidak salah di akhir Maret kalau tidak salah ketika Panja Komisi 9 mengundang pihak Kementerian Kesehatan dan kemudian Kementerian Kesehatan menyampaikan secara detail begitu harga satuan per dosis dan seterusnya. Seharusnya informasi itu dapat dipublikasi sejak di awal begitu. Nah, kemudian posisi pemerintah dalam kontrak juga sangat lemah. Kita tahu persis bahwa hampir semua negara membutuhkan vaksin karena posisi kita sangat lemah sehingga produsen dengan seenaknya memberikan harga seenaknya begitu ya. Kemudian proses pengadaan untuk alat pendukung dilakukan secara pengadaan langsung yang tentu akan menimbulkan potensi kickback dan seterusnya. Dalam konteks distribusi misalnya, potensi yang kami temukan adalah adanya konflik kepentingan dalam proses pengadaan gitu. Ada tidak menutup kemungkinan penyedia yang melakukan distribusi itu dengan cara ditunjuk begitu. Kemudian handling yang buruk juga dapat berdampak pada vaksin kadaluarsa begitu ya. Bahkan 2021 kemarin begitu 2020 mohon maaf ada jutaan gitu ya vaksin yang rusak begitu itu akibat dari handling yang buruk meskipun klaimnya bahwa kesulitan untuk mendistribusikan ke masyarakat menjadi salah satu. Kemudian ada masyarakat yang sulit untuk mau divaksin. Ya ini kan akibat dari komunikasi pemerintah yang sebetulnya juga cukup buruk begitu. Nah, kemudian ada potensi di dalam proses penyimpanan begitu baik ada di pemerintah pusat, provinsi dan juga di kabupaten kota. Vaksin program sepanjang penanganan vaksin COVID tentu akan proses penyimpanannya akan akan bertumpuk antara vaksin COVID dengan vaksin-vaksin program khususnya dengan anak. Bahkan sepanjang akhir tahun 2021 kalau tidak salah sempat terjadi jual beli vaksin yang ada di Surabaya, jual beli vaksin dosis ketiga yang ada di Surabaya begitu. Selanjutnya. Nah, seharusnya pemerintah dalam hal ini belajar begitu ya terkait soal penanganan krisis kesehatan sebelumnya. Bahkan di global, di Afrika Barat begitu, ketika ada krisis endemi Ebola begitu, itu juga terjadi ada kasus pemborosan keuangan publik dalam jumlah besar. Bahkan di konteks Indonesia itu kita pernah mengalami begitu dalam vaksin flu burung yang taksiran kerugiannya mencapai 63,9 miliar. Selanjutnya. Nah, ini setidaknya kami menemukan ada 4 begitu ya rekomendasi yang kami dorong. Pertama adalah perlu ada peningkatan transparansi dan akuntabilitas dalam pengadaan vaksin dan juga logistik pendukungnya. Setidaknya Kementerian Kesehatan begitu ya dan dinas-dinas kesehatan melakukan pencatatan begitu secara detail terkait soal 2 hal. Pertama adalah vaksinnya sendiri dan juga logistik pendukungnya itu sendiri begitu. Mulai dari jarum suntik sampai dengan cool box dan lain sebagainya. Kemudian yang keduanya adalah mempublikasi secara detail begitu informasi pengadaan vaksin secara berkala dan mudah diakses oleh publik. Kami membayangkan di awal ketika pemerintah atau Kementerian Kesehatan mempublikasi dashboard gitu ya. Kami membayangkan awalnya bukan hanya data calon penerima vaksin dan vaksin yang sudah terdistribusi, tapi dashboard itu menjadi satu informasi utuh terkait soal pengadaan vaksin gitu. Misalnya pembelian Sinovac tahun kesekian dan bulan kesekian gitu, itu harganya berapa, vaksin Pfizer, Moderna dan lain sebagainya. Termasuk juga vaksin-vaksin yang bersumber dari hibah. Meskipun vaksin bersumber dari hibah gitu, tapi kan negara dalam hal ini Kementerian Kesehatan menjemput vaksinnya begitu ya. Itu tentu kan mengeluarkan biaya sendiri. Nah, kemudian yang ketiganya adalah proses pengadaan darurat yang transparan dan akuntabel itu menjadi penting untuk dilakukan. Regulasi mengatur untuk dilakukan pengadaan terbuka, pengadaan darurat, tapi begitu ya kontraknya itu harus dibuka. Bahkan peraturan Komisi Informasi nomor 1 tahun 2021 Perkislip nomor standar layanan informasi publik, kontrak menjadi informasi yang terbuka yang mudah diakses oleh publik. Tapi sayangnya di instrumen pengadaan dalam hal ini LPSE yang ada di Kementerian Kesehatan gitu ya, itu tidak ada informasi kontrak yang detail begitu. Yang keempat adalah e-procurement, kami nilai masih cukup efektif gitu ya untuk mengurangi terjadinya praktek korupsi. Saya rasa itu Mas Agung. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mas Agus Sarwono, from your presentation, because we also put some notes because especially related to the how we can do the procurement on the COVID-19 tools, because of the weakness of the developing countries' position. So the private sector again and again they take the profit on the pandemics and the profit more on the pandemics. So that's why we to bridge us to the next speakers, how we can build the production, how we can build the scale of production, because we already have the previous discussion related to the manufacturing. Indonesia is the one of the potential countries who have the manufacturing capacities to develop the vaccine, diagnostic and therapeutics. But how we can build this, maybe our next speakers can explain more related to this. I asked Ananya Basu from Public Services International to giving the presentation. Ananya will provide her presentation offline. Please, maybe can for the organization to give the stage.
Hello everyone, and thank you Agung, and a big thank you to also the entire C20 Vaccine Access and Global Health Working Group for giving PSI an opportunity to present our points on this very important issue. We're all very sleepy and we've had lots of cups of coffee to keep awake. So my presentation is actually really short. It's just 3 slides. So I'll quickly begin. So for us at PSI, our affiliates in the health sector really comprise of the many, many thousands of health workers who battled really hard during the pandemic. And the reason PSI really wants to engage on this question of manufacturing of vaccines and pharma products and expanding the capacities of production through public-led interventions was because actually many of our affiliates who witnessed firsthand what the vaccine appetite really did to their countries, and in terms of what it meant for them at their work to not have access to essential treatments that they require and use. So they really felt the need to sort of actively participate and raise their voices in processes that shape global health outcomes, and in spaces such as these, where one can intervene on the question of how to really address vaccine inequity. So I will take this opportunity to share with all of you a few key points that PSI wants to press, specifically on the need for public production for health goods. So it's true that we really achieved a remarkable feat globally with public funding and technological innovations in managing to develop and produce life-saving vaccines at like record time. And but along with that, it is also true that when we speak of saving lives, it was sort of lives that were saved preferentially, with countries in the global south receiving the short end of the stick. And what was most shocking was also that despite even the WHO repeatedly calling for prioritizing health workers to be vaccinated globally, in many countries of the global south, healthcare workers were left waiting for the first dose of vaccine, while high-income countries in the global north had vaccinated almost their entire populations. At PSI, we've heard multiple experiences of from our affiliates of the challenges that they faced because of the lack of access to vaccination. For example, in Pakistan, the lady health workers, who are the main health workers in the primary healthcare system, were faced with a dilemma when they were asked to step out of their homes into the community for the polio vaccination drive, while they themselves had not received even their first dose of vaccination. So, and these experiences were not isolated, and we heard such experiences from health workers across many, many countries. Next slide. So it is really clear that the current system of vaccine production reliant on big pharma and that of supply and access that depends on charity and donations from high-income countries to low-income countries is really not a solution for responding to a global health emergency or even for strengthening global health systems. And private companies will always operate with the logic of profit, and people's health will never be a priority. So that is why when we speak of expanding manufacturing capacities, we feel that there is an urgent need for this to be public-led and owned. Within the current system, it is sort of impossible for the state to even fulfill its duties of realizing the health rights of its people. Big pharma monopoly will always keep the cost of life-saving drugs and vaccines high, and that denies many governments from low-income countries to access these drugs. For example, in India, a recent study published early this year found that about 96,000 women every year are diagnosed with cervical cancer, and among this, the number of women, about 6,000 of them die each year. And the vaccine for cervical cancer is available, but right now it's not manufactured locally. So to complete the vaccination course, an individual needs to pay about $90 to $100 US. And this is really not something that most of the rural and urban poor families in India can really afford. Secondly, again, in the hands of private companies, production of vaccines will, of course, stop during low periods of demand, right? Because there will be no profit and there'll be no gains for them. And that means that in the countries, those still requiring the vaccine will be denied treatment. And again, it is therefore only the state that can ensure that those who require vaccines during low periods of demand actually get that treatment. And also, we've really seen during the pandemic the failure of public-private partnership models. Vast amount of public money had gone into development of the vaccines produced by big pharma like AstraZeneca and Pfizer. But even then, they managed to retain monopoly over the production and over the technical knowledge, and we really couldn't do anything about it. So, for example, like Professor Torblanche also mentioned, even like initiatives like CTAP failed because private companies would not share, voluntarily share their knowledge and the technical know-how. And also, if you're looking at vaccine access for all, there is a need to move beyond private and companies and big pharma, because at the end of the day, even they don't have the capacity to really produce for all, and we've seen that they kind of didn't even manage to deliver on the promised quantities to the high-income countries as well, right? So one more point on even when we have countries in the south manufacturing, when private players manufacture in the south, there is evidence to show that at the end of the day, it's not really the countries in the global south that get access to it, because the richer countries will always hoard and get first access because really, they can. For example, even with COVAX, which was really intended to, speakers before me have said, was intended to cater to global needs and to priority countries at the end of the day, because rich countries they did those bilateral agreements and hoarded vaccines again. We really need to focus our efforts in creating a system now that taps into production capacities of the countries in the global south to cater to the needs of this region. And we feel that can only be realized through a system that is not private owned and controlled, but public led and owned. And PSI has a few asks from the G20 countries, which I'm just going to take 1 more minute to read out and then end my presentation. Can you move to them? So we have 4 asks. Vaccines are global public goods. The state is responsible for the production of public goods and should therefore invest in research, development, manufacturing, supplying, as well as access to all such products. Vaccines need to be manufactured at scale, and we need to ensure easy supply and access to where they are needed. This can only be achieved by a system of public-led and public-owned production. Secondly, countries need to make commitments towards establishing regional hubs through collaboration and cooperation that can cater to each region's needs and access to pharmaceutical products. Governments need to commit to public spending for establishing such infrastructure in order to strengthen the public health systems and to respond to global health emergencies. Countries need to maintain these facilities during low periods of requirement to ensure a minimum level of access to the products. In between health emergencies, the need for vaccines and other health-related technologies drop. So we need a commitment from the state to cover for minimal capacity that is required to maintain the production of public health goods that are intermittent or have low economies of scale. Governments need to use TRIPS flexibilities, including compulsory licensing, to break IP barriers and monopoly of pharmaceutical companies. We all agree that a complete waiver on the TRIPS agreement during public health emergencies is a must. But in between emergencies, during normal times, governments need to commit to make full use of existing flexibilities in the TRIPS agreement to ensure affordability, accessibility, and availability of needed medical products by the common people. So we really need a reform of the global healthcare system for vaccines, medicines, diagnostics, and all medical equipments and supplies for preparedness and response by refocusing on local and public-led production and promoting public industrial policies that enable local manufacturing capacities for public health goods. Manufacturing of public goods ultimately should not follow the logic of profit, but that of public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. That's a pretty presentation from you, because vaccine access for all need to move beyond the private companies and big pharma, and we note that we need to push the public-led production, because it's the most important also for us to push the manufacturing and access to COVID-19 dose. So we are in the end of the plenary session. Now we are not opening the question and answer, but if there is some of you who wants to give overview related to these speakers, please, you may have the screen, or you can raise your hand. Yeah, Mr. Deepak, please.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. It's wonderful if we could have all G20 leaders who were listening to us. That very beautifully reflects how the gap between global south and global north, even within the same country, existing and creating barriers. And we listen to indigenous people related program. We also global fund. Even in difficult situation, global fund program maintain its program achievement. Even no single red flag we seen in Daniel's presentation. It was wonderful. That is why we need global investment to the global fund. That is why all the G20 nations should pledge their commitment or show commitment to fully fund the global fund, and let's achieve 18 billion target of the global fund. To all presentations, we can simply ask, we can have G20 leaders, do you want to rely on current system or structures that only recognize government and UN agencies, which maybe willfully, strategically, or by mistake missing the recognition of the CSOs and the communities? If you don't want to see any future gaps or barriers, or if you want to promote equity, this is the right time to invest and include CSO and communities. Maybe since we are also listening about the FIF, if it is the case, it is already decided, let's make sure that all G20 leaders be positive towards the community and the CSOs, without which you cannot fulfill your commitment to serve the very poor people, marginalized people, and global South, which lies also within your country, own country, even the G20 nations. We listen so many stories. This is all for now. Thank you very much.
This is the right time to invest in communities. Thank you, Mr. Deepak. Is there anyone to give another overview related to this plenary session? Or no? Or maybe someone in Zoom, please, some team to check. Is there anyone who raising up in the Zoom? Okay, no. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak, to closing the plenary sessions very well, and also thank you for all participants and also for real super speakers on this meeting. Don't forget that we still have side event and also plenary session 3, and also tomorrow we still have the recap and overview from all of you related to our recommendation to the third health working groups meeting on the 22nd and 23rd August. And also tomorrow we will also have the public campaign organized by Indonesia for Global Justice and also People's Vaccine Alliance to push the G20 expand access to COVID-19 tools. Maybe my colleague will explain more related on this. Please, Mbak Komang Audina, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe for the last time, we should give a round of applause to all speakers and all the participations here to keep the spirit high for this meeting. Okay. Before, Bapak Agung already mentioned about our public campaigns. Public campaign will take place in Indonesia National Monument. Please note that it's not mandatory for you. If you're interested, please join and wear the T-shirt from the merchandise we gave before to the sessions. We will meet again in this lobby tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Jakarta time because the campaign will be start at 9 a.m. in Indonesia National Monument. Thank you once again. I think that's all. Thank you for the online participations. Good evening. Have a good rest and see you tomorrow.
Recording stopped.